and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 7 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you'd like to watch along, start watching now. So we start out with a sort of suspect conversation where Gendo is talking to somebody, and it sounds like they gave falsified information to the Americans. Presumably they were requesting something related to the Evangelion that they didn't want to disclose. So it seems like Misato's had a rough night, and she's choosing to treat it with hair of the dog. So Shinji at this point seems to be more comfortable with Misato. At least comfortable enough to criticize her slovenly lifestyle. There's a weird sort of role reversal here where Shinji's doing all the chores and cooking, and he's asking Misato if she really does have time to come to the parent-teacher conference at school. So, nicely for Shinji, Toji and Kensuke are being friendly with him. You know, it's a nice change, considering he had no friends and wasn't really talking to people before. Of course, today, Toji and Kensuke seem more interested in Misato. And that really sort of goes for all the boys in the school. So Shinji's thoughts, I think, are especially pertinent because all of his classmates look at her as an attractive woman who's also the operations director of Nerve, but Shinji knows the unfortunate truth that she is, in fact, a slob. So Shinji's doing a little thinking on his own here about the nature of the Evangelion, because he doesn't really know what it is, and there is a brief scene showing one of the biological elements of EVA Unit 1. Shinji also remarks that the entry plug smells like blood, and I think this is all symbolic of essentially the womb. That's what the entry plug is. Of course, I'm saying that with knowledge of stuff we learn later. Well, I guess it's not that big a leap to make now since they referred to the power cable as an umbilical cord. So back with Gendo, he's talking about all sorts of secretive, politically motivated stuff. Things about budgets and stuff that the United States are up to. It seems like Nerve is in a competition of sorts with the US. So the second impact has come up again. And what we are now learning, courtesy of Ritsuko, is that what we knew about the second impact was essentially government propaganda, and that the truth of the matter was that it was caused by an angel. And that's why the angels having returned is such a big deal. I'm thinking that a lot of what Ritsuko is talking about is purely speculation, but essentially they're trying to prevent a third impact from happening. I don't think a lot of them actually know that that's a distinct possibility at this case. It's more like they just want to ensure that it doesn't happen. So, in contrast to the previous morning sequence, Misato is up early, fully dressed, rather nicely, and just leaves. That is, of course, because she's going on a business trip. But I guess it just goes to show that she can be tidy and take care of herself when it's needed. So whatever this business trip Misato is going to is, it seems to be in like a sort of a fortified building. So it seems like whatever this conference is about, the unit in question is equipped with a nuclear reactor to power it. Ritsuko is raising concerns about security, and Given Japan's history with nuclear power, I think this is an interesting sequence. So, interestingly enough, this guy is sort of slapping back at Unit 1 due to its tendency to sort of lose control. So I guess the argument here is that a big walking nuclear reactor is better than a monster. So, this guy is airing all sorts of dirty laundry. Apparently, NERV is not as well off as they might appear, and that the United Nations have had to approve extra budgets and things like that. It seems like these guys are really intent on sort of taking down NERV. Notably, Misato is taking it a lot worse than Ritsuko is. So we're getting the first glimpse at the unit. It's a big, I guess, unmanned giant robot called Jet Alone. So it's nuclear powered and autonomous, or at least remotely controlled. And what's going on here is apparently the first test. So things are going pretty well so far. It's taken its first step. It's managed to balance. It's removed the control rods from its reactor, which I think gives it an interestingly distinct appearance. Interestingly enough, things have already started going wrong because coolant to the nuclear reactor is losing pressure, thereby not transferring heat as effectively as it probably should. So I guess in a similar fashion where all the safety measures they try to enact when Unit 1 is going berserk fail, all the controls on Jet Alone are now failing, so it's walking straight ahead, straight through a building, with no ability to stop it. You gotta wonder from a control system perspective how they were allowed to build something like this that could just walk autonomously without any sort of natural impetus to get it to stop. If that makes any sense. So interestingly enough, Misato is volunteering herself to try and stop the machine, since there is essentially zero chance that it'll stop on its own. So we've got a nice little scene here about trying to get the authority to reveal a security code to Misato. And they're essentially playing phone tag, and they need to get written approval. It's poking a little fun at the bureaucracy of the US, I guess. And you know what? I can't say they're wrong. Misato's decided to take responsibility for this operation. And I guess she has a plan of her own. Essentially, they're going to drop Unit 1 in to sort of hold it in place while Misato manually overrides the computer. So naturally, this is going to be a very dangerous operation for Misato, considering she is essentially entering a nuclear reactor that was designed not to have any people inside it. So it's a very dangerous place to be, especially because it's on the verge of meltdown. I'd imagine, even protective equipment for radiation would only be so effective if you're standing in what is essentially a nuclear meltdown. I'd imagine it'd be something on the same order of magnitude as the shield Unit 0 used to fend off the Fifth Angel. So, concerningly, if Jet Alone was plotting at a slow pace before, it's jogging now. And I'm not sure if that's just a glitch in the control system or if perhaps this whole event was some sort of sabotage in the first place. Knowing the sort of shady stuff we've been seeing earlier this episode, I would not doubt it if this entire thing was sabotaged by Gendo and company. So Unit 1 manages to catch up to the stray Jet Alone and grabs it, and it starts holding it in place, giving Misato the chance to board the vessel. Of course, it's not as easy as she drew it up in the plan, but she's making a good go of it regardless. Misato has entered the control room in Jet Alone, and she's immediately bypassing the security with the code she was given. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, the password isn't working, and it's throwing an error message instead. This is very bad news, because the pressure in the reactor and the temperature are quickly increasing, and Unit 1 can only hold it off for so long, I'd imagine. Misato, and I guess what's an insane act of bravery, is deciding instead to manually insert the control rods. So that'll slow down the nuclear reaction and sort of salvage the situation, but from my paltry understanding of nuclear reactors, control rods are massive and they're made out of extremely dense material. I would say it's an incredible feat of strength to be able to move one manually in this situation. So at the last minute, whatever error was mucking things up, I guess, goes away. the password works and all the control rods are reinserted, thus killing the reaction. So at this point, there is no doubt in Misato's mind that this entire thing was staged. And given that little snippet between Ritsuko and Gendo, it's very clearly their plan. So we're slowly getting little hints here and there that there's a lot more politics in play than there probably should be, given that the world is at stake. So just like the beginning of the episode, things return to the status quo, with Misato starting off her morning with the beer. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess. So even though Shinji sort of confides his feelings about Misato to Kensuke and Toji, well, at first they're not sympathetic, but then they sort of offer a new perspective. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one.